Syfan with Clow Pitch Behavior. I am joining you on Nextdoor Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and the Nextdoor Radio app. You have joined me on a Friday at 10 a.m., which means it's time for Behavior 911. I am so excited to talk to you today about a couple of behavior principles that you can take forward into your life to help improve behavior around you, improve your own behavior, understand why people do different things, and just give everybody another tool toward having a more successful and productive life. So, today we're going to talk about two different principles of behavior, a high P sequence and the PREMAC principle. And we'll go through each. They're a little similar and they're a little different. Talk about when we can use these different things to be able to understand and improve behavior. Let's start out with that high probability sequence, high P sequence. Now, what that looks at is taking concepts from Newtonian physics, an object in motion is likely to stay in motion, and bringing it into behavior. So once we start working in a direction, we're likely to continue working. So let's say we've got something that we need to ask something that's going to be pretty tough. So perhaps you've got a kiddo and you need to turn off the tablet. Oof, that can be a really tough one. Well, if we can get a couple of little things done before that, we can start getting that momentum forward of listening, following directions, and moving along the way. We're going to have an easier time getting hearing ears when we get to that harder request. So that might look like, hey, bud, can you look at me for a second? Not a super hard request. It gets us a little step toward we're listening and we're working together. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm gonna get something to drink. Do you want some juice? That's a super easy one. We're likely to answer that question. We're likely to be honest about it. Great. We can go get that, bring it back. Hey, I've got your juice. It's right here on the table. Go ahead and take a sip. Make sure it's the one that you wanted. Another one that's super easy to follow. Now we've got a couple of different directions we followed in a row. Our object in motion is really picking up some good speed. Now we can keep it in motion. Let's pause the tablet for a minute and go have some lunch. We've started out with a couple easy to follow requests, and then we've gotten to our tougher one. And by getting that object in motion first, we're more likely to see continued listening and having somebody be open to what we're going to talk about or the request we're going to make. Now, on the other side, we've got the PREMAC principle, and that's kind of the opposite, but headed the same direction. We still are looking for, hey, I've got a big request I need to make. I need to make sure that it's heard. I need to make sure that it's respected, and that we're communicating here. Or where the high P sequence looks at a couple easy things into our harder request. The PREMAC principle is going to look at, hey, sometimes we've got to eat our veggies before we get our dessert. Sometimes we got to do something tough, but don't worry, something really good is going to come of it. And it's often called the grandmother or the grandfather principle because it's like, oh, you got to eat your veggies first and then you can have your dessert. So this can look like, hey, we've really got to finish homework. When we're done with homework, do you want to go out and just go for a walk, get to the park, spend some time over there? Now, what can we do after we finish this really difficult thing to celebrate that success? And this often will turn into when it's used at its most almost blunt level, like very, very simple. It's like, do what I say and then you get the cookie, which can work. But what I really want to see and I really want to encourage is, yeah, let's work on this really tough thing together and then let's have a bonding moment together. Let's have this increase the strength of our relationship and our ability to collaborate and keep communication open rather than it being a you do what I say and then I'll deliver you something you want, which is effective. I'm not going to say it isn't, but it leads to a couple of different things. First is pay me or I'm not doing it, which I'm sure many of you have seen in your kids. Well, I'm not doing that chore unless you pay me $10. Okay, got a little bit of a problem here. And it also leads to I am only doing this because I feel like I'm going to miss out on this next thing. And I don't really care for you and I don't really care for this task, but I just want to get to the next thing. And that pulls us away from the connection that we're hoping to have with other people within our lives. Now, we can use both of these principles on ourselves as well. So I might go with that high P sequence and go, man, I really need to say do the dishes. And I will tell you right now, I am not a lady that likes to do dishes. Everybody's got their chore that they're not into. That's one for me. I'm not into it. But there's other chores that are easier for me that I find to be, say, more rewarding, or I find to be just simply easier. For me, living on the farm, going and cleaning the barn, shoveling that out, no problem. That can be one that I do. Okay, I've got a little bit of movement going. I don't mind wiping down the counters. Great. Normally you'd want to do that after doing dishes, but it doesn't matter in this moment. I'm just trying to get the ball rolling. Go through that. Now that I've got myself rolling, can I get to the dishes maybe a little bit easier? It's easier to go from wiping the counter to doing the dishes than sitting on the couch to doing the dishes. I get a little bit of movement going first. You can make that transition to that hardest thing a lot easier. Now, that same thing with the pre-Mac principle. Man, I really need to do something difficult. Let's say another one. I'm not super into folding laundry. You guys can tell I'm an amazing housekeeper. I'm not. That's okay. Everybody's got their strengths and their weaknesses, but I can take these principles and make my life more fulfilling and get these things done in without feeling completely bogged down by them. So using the pre-Mac principle, I might go, man, I really got a lot of laundry that I need to fold. What can I do afterwards to celebrate the fact that I've completed this? Now, since I'm doing this by myself, it's going to be less of a creating a relationship or increasing a bond with somebody else. It might be very much that. How do I celebrate that this is done in a way that helps pair this being done with me feeling awesome? Because with a lot of chores and things and hard stuff, us as adults and with kids, the finishing of the task isn't reinforcing. It's not something that makes us go, "Man, this is really nice that this is done. I'm excited to do this again next time." So going through and going, "What does it mean to me when the clothes are folded?" Okay? It means that there's not a pile of laundry anymore. Well, where was that pile of laundry? For us, often, piled up on the bed. Now I've got this open space. I can do something there like, okay, I'm going to lay out and read a book, or I'm going to go ahead and take the time to make the bed and then go, this looks really, really nice. And I feel accomplished in this moment and have that moment of celebrating the end of that task and moving forward. All sorts of different ways that you can use high probability sequence and pre-Mac principle to help support changes in behavior. Now, briefly, I did mention the farm there for a second, so let me tell you a little bit more about that. At Clove Hitch Behavior, what I do is help change behavior while protecting the spirit. I mostly work with tantrums and meltdowns, fears and phobias, and behaviors resulting from trauma. I meet kids on the farm. We use that space to be able to find our healing and find new behaviors to replace the ones that we're currently using that aren't working well for us or helping us move forward in our life. And one of the things that I want to make sure we talk about here is the relation between high prob high probability sequence and pre-Mac principle between the farm and home. So, when you come to the farm and there's all this cool stuff, sometimes you got to leave. In fact, every time at the end of session you got to leave, and that can be really tough. So that could mean, okay, let's consider high probability sequence. Let's get a couple little requests in place till we get to the you gotta leave. Hey, let's walk over here and see what that duck is doing by your car. Wow, that duck is so silly over there. Let's see what this plant has it started flowering again? No, it hasn't just yet. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take your craft that we made and put it in the car. Perfect. All right. And I'll see you next week. And by using those little high P sequence steps to make those transitions a little bit more smooth, we go from, I don't want to leave the farm. I want to take a bunny home to everything is okay. And we're practicing making this transition smoothly, which can then translate into home. On the pre-Mac principle side of things, sometimes there's really tough stuff we got to do before we can do stuff that we want to. So we may be coming through and going, man, I really want to see that horse. Fantastic. You can see that horse. I would love that. Well, that gate's a little tricky. It's a little hard to open. And there's no getting around that. We have to do something difficult before we can get to the horses. And that's something difficult for some kids means asking for assistance. Hey, can I have something to stand on so I can reach the latch? Which is a great skill. Sometimes that is taking the time to continue working through something hard and not giving up on it, even when it's difficult. There's all sorts of different things that we can work through before we get to the thing that we want. Using these principles to develop those skills can be really, really helpful. I'm so excited that you joined me today on Behavior 911. This has been brought to you on Nextdoor Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and the Nextdoor Radio app. You can go on there and see any of our past shows under the podcast tab. I will see you not next week, it's Thanksgiving, but the week after at 10 a.m. on Fridays. See you then.